Hello and welcome to the Super Freak Media podcast, No Ghouls Allowed, with me, your host, Jonno Butler, and joining me this time we have Liam Banks.
Hey, I'm still here.
He's still here, and he's on his own this week, which is going to be interesting. We're going to chat about some things together. We're going to talk about remakes. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of remakes.
That is so weird that you said that, because I was literally thinking, like, we should do that. Good, bad, and ugly, so...
That's it.
Psychic. We're psychic, dude.
We go. We're also going to have a little chat about the things we've missed due to the current situation, things we've missed in 2020 and probably will miss for a little while in 2021, and what we are looking forward to getting back into. I know for one, I'm definitely looking forward to getting back to the cinema, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So we live in a time where almost every other film seems to be a remake or a reboot or a reimagining of some description, or maybe it's based on something. So it's based on a book, it's based on a TV series. Actually finding some sort of original content seems to be quite difficult these days. Something
definitely.
Like Spider-Man that's been rebooted 3 times in the past 15, 20 years. Is
pretty insane.
Is an example, and then that's not counting the kind of the animated Into the Spider-Verse, if you want to count that one as a 4th iteration. Then I'm pretty sure there's TV versions of that. The Ghostbusters remake, which is coming out next year, but then also had a reboot, I guess, with the female cast in 2016.
Yeah, I'd say that was a reboot. I think this is going to be I think they're calling it a soft sequel.
Oh.
I think that's kind of like the new in phrase, or it's a soft reboot, isn't it?
So it's...
No, I like a good hard reboot, I do. Or a good hard remake.
I've heard. Wow.
Oh,
Jesus,
dear.
Now there's only 2 of us, it's gotten absolutely filthy.
The filth meter is like maxed out already. It's
filth
we're doing well.
High. Talking about remaking things with the female cast, I heard at one point they were talking about remaking Face Off with a female cast.
Okay, that could have been interesting. I would be interested to see who would be the female equivalent of Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, though.
Yeah, it's like this is the kind of the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was at what point does it become just a money-making scheme and a remake for a remake's sake, and at what point is it actually a remake on merit?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think for the last, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's really hard to find original content these days, and I think that comes from the fact that studios are just scared to take that risk. You know, back in the 80s when all these ideas were coming into fruition, I don't think that we live in a time now where people don't have the ideas. I think that the studios are just a little bit tighter with their purses now, so they'd much rather kind of do something which is pretty much a carbon copy of the original, because they know kids these days won't watch the original maybe, but it's using the name and branding of something that they'll know will get bums on seats. It's a tricky one.
I've got no problem with kind of bringing something up to date, as it were, so that like, what's the name of the film? The recent one with Lady Gaga in.
Oh, A Star Is Born.
Star Is Born. There's a Star Is Born for pretty much every generation going back years, isn't there? You know, I mean, and that's bringing a fresh look at the story. But it's when something is made for what appears to be just a cynical kind of cash grab that really gets to me. Like, well, it made money last time, so we'll just churn another one out, not as a sequel, but just as a sort of remake. So I don't want to go down the let's bash remakes
the negative
route
rabbit hole
straight away. So I hear you've got a good one to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think linking into that initial point, a remake that grabs my attention and that I really enjoy is one that offers something new. And like you said, with A Star Is Born, for example, it brings that story into the forefront of the minds of people of that generation. So the concept can be the same, but they maybe add something that just makes it current. So I guess we obviously usually talk within the realm of horror. My choice would be the 2013 remake of Evil Dead by Fede Alvarez. Now, I think Sam Raimi's original is an iconic film. and particularly for people like us who are still in that indie sector of horror, it's something that we can look at really fondly and think, that could have been us, like at a weekend in the woods with like hose pipes gushing blood everywhere and stuff. And I think I will always love that film, and I still watch the original quite a bit. But for me, what was really great about the remake in 2013 was the fact that they took like the core concept. So you had the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. There was a group of early 20-somethings going into the woods, a cabin in the woods, and basically they unleash something that they have no way of controlling or dealing with, and basically horror ensues. And that's the core of that story. But they completely flipped the script from obviously having Ash, played by Bruce Campbell in the original, to having Mia, played by Jane Levi, in the remake. And to me, the way that they went about it didn't feel as forced as maybe some of the other remakes have, where they've had a female protagonist. Now, I mean, most people, obviously our listeners will know, audience of our films will know, we're all about female empowerment and everything. But I do think there is this cynical side to me that does see that studios are leapfrogging on kind of the Me Too movement and things like that to put these female characters in place, when sometimes it's not always what's best for the story. And I think that's what causes problems with me for remakes. And I think people got really too upset about the Ghostbusters remake that you mentioned. I think that was completely unnecessary, and I admired it because we had female scientists, which you obviously young girls, women growing up, they've got something to look to, whereas we've had that privilege, we've had these characters to look up to our entire lives. But with the Evil Dead remake, I felt it was really organic that they didn't want another Ash character. We had Mia, who was her own protagonist in her own right. She had her own reason for being there. She had her own kind of way of turning into this anti-hero, I guess, by the end of the film. And that's what really stood out to me. I thought her performance was great. I think everyone who was involved did an incredible job. But what I really enjoyed was the fact that it took like elements that were so recognizable from the original. So the camera work, like the sound design, even obviously the book itself is present there in some way, but it just turned it up a notch. Because you watched the original Evil Dead, it's not the most professional looking film, but that's kind of where its charm lies. And I don't think that would have worked if you're shopping that same idea around again. You want something that's a bit upgraded. And I don't know, I suppose what sets that remake apart from maybe the other installments of the series, you've obviously got Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, but I think Evil Dead 2 is basically a remake of the original one, but with a budget, and they kind of knew what they were doing. And of course you've got the Ash vs Evil Dead series, and I will be honest, I didn't really enjoy that anywhere near as much as I enjoyed the Evil Dead remake. And I'm excited. I want to see more in that universe, and I think it worked because it did leave the door open to tell its own stories then in that universe. And there was no reason why, I don't know, Mia and Ash could have then come together and killed some Deadites together at some point. Like it was its own thing, but it just shared enough DNA with the original to kind of, I think, warrant being made. So that for me is probably one of the best remakes I've seen in recent memory, and from a guy as well who started making short films. So incredibly inspiring from our standpoint, because like that's who we want to be at the end of the day. So I guess that would be my good entry. I mean, there's plenty of bad ones, and I suppose honourable mentions. I personally enjoyed the remakes of Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the early 2000 remakes. I thought they were good. Not perfect, but a damn sight better than the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I think if Charlie was on the podcast, Charlie Clark, she would have very much voiced her opinion on that one. So you're welcome, Charlie.
I think the thing is there that the Evil Dead and to a certain extent, the Friday the 13th remake, that they took the source material and they were brave enough to go, I guess, in their own direction, especially with Evil Dead.
Definitely.
I think that's when a remake is warranted. As you said, if they turned round and went, right, it's 3 decades down the line, we're going to remake The Evil Dead, and all they're going to do is just basically polish the original.
Yeah.
That takes away all of the original's charm.
Yeah, definitely.
So they
Absolutely.
couldn't have done that, but that would have been easy. That would have been the easy route.
I think, unfortunately, we see them taking the easier route more often than not. I mean, an example that springs to my mind of something which was pretty much a carbon copy but had the potential to add so much more was the Carrie remake.
Yeah.
And that was, I can remember that was a film I was studying at university for my dissertation at the time. And I can remember just as I finished my dissertation, handed that in, a week later, the remake came out. So, of course, I'd been watching the original so much. I was like, okay, let's go and see the remake. And I can remember sitting there watching it and hearing the dialogue pretty much word for word in places and thinking, why does this need to be a thing? It's not a reflection. I'm not saying that the director was bad, or obviously Chloe Grace Moretz was involved. I think she's a very capable actress. There was no problems there. It was just the fact that the source material was basically just being replicated, but it was from a book and a film that were in the 70s, and they kind of hinted at like bringing in mobile phone technology and stuff, but we live in a day and age now where there's like social media bullying and all of this stuff, and that really, to me, would have been something to really capitalize on. And like religious extremism and all of that is something that we very much hear about in the news.
Oh, that's it. If you're going to remake a film like Carrie, you've got to embrace the fact that you're in the 21st century. You've got to bring it into the 21st century, use the new methods of technology, the ways of bullying that could have happened. Really, because what ended up happening was it just felt like a throwback. And if you want to watch a throwback, watch the original. Yeah,
100%. I mean, even the iconic prom scene, like, I can remember them building it up. Like, basically, all the marketing campaign was about that. And I mean, I get that. Obviously, people know the story. They kind of know that iconic image of her being drenched in blood. But if your whole marketing campaign is about that one moment that is then literally almost beat for beat the same as the original, what is the point? Like, I wanted to see so much more happen. Even in just that section, I'd have probably been a little bit happier. And it was a huge letdown. I think that's the sort of behaviour from studios that leaves a sour taste in a lot of particularly horror fans' minds, because I think horror falls victim to it more often than not.
I think it's interesting that you said that, because I think horror is the genre that gets remade the most. I think a horror remake, you get one every year. A franchise is rebooted or something comes back, whether it's a belated sequel like the Scream franchise, or it is actually a proper a remake of something like My Bloody Valentine got remade, and it seems to be ripe for picking, for want of a better word.
I think, it's interesting as well, though, that, like you said, that it doesn't seem to have really slowed down. I think particularly in the early 2000s, when you had Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes studio just basically taking everything. You had every iconic villain being rebooted, and of course Halloween was rebooted at that point. And I mean, Halloween is such a crazy franchise to talk about, because you've had the initial Halloween 1 and 2, like back in the 70s, early 80s. Then you had Halloween 3, which they basically were saying, oh, well, let's make Halloween an anthology and we'll do different films every holiday. Then they went back because everyone was like, where the hell's Michael Myers? And then you had the remakes in like kind of early 2000s. And we've just had another sequel which completely gets rid of everything bar the first film. And now we've got like a new trilogy kind of with that. So that's insane, but like horror fans lap it up. Like I personally, I know I'll be there as soon as cinemas reopen and Halloween Kills is on. Like, get me a ticket, god damn it. It's we're weird, aren't we? We complain, but we still go and see it.
Well, that's it. I think there's definitely going to be an audience for these things, because it's a kind of morbid curiosity of, please don't ruin the original for me, I hope you're good, but at the same time sort of wanting it to be pants because you want the original to be the definitive entry.
It's a fine line. I think I'm sure there will have been people who were unhappy about The Evil Dead and the liberties that they took in the remake, but to me, like, I think you've used the correct word there. It was the bravery of those filmmakers involved to say, you do what you need to do with this story and make it your own. So yeah, really good film.
Do you think there's something in it when you say films are remade, A, for the money, obviously, because it's a franchise, you know there's a dedicated audience there, but also to a certain extent that I guess kids these days, oh my gosh, you know, the younger audience isn't going to go and watch the 1970s version of Carrie, for example.
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know. It's like, I know even when we were at school, if a film was in black and white, sorry, or if it had subtitles, everyone had like grown in the class. Now, personally, to me, I'm a film fan, so I don't really mind that, but not everyone has that mindset. So I know there's a lot of things that can put people off. And I think, yeah, if something hasn't been made in the last 10 years and it doesn't have the Blumhouse introduction logo, I think a lot of kids will switch off before they maybe watch stuff. I will say, I think those of us out there, though, who do then develop a love for the genre, that's where it gets really exciting. Because I know for a fact when I was kind of like in my mid-teen years into my 20s, it was just full of me just exploring all of these old horror films and stuff that I just knew like nothing about. I'd just seen posters and pictures. And then I was like, God, these films are actually really great. And they've inspired so much since then. So the people who should find it will find it, I think. But yeah, you're dead right. It puts people off.
Yeah, so you started it off on a positive, which is always nice. I'm here to drag it back down into the depths.
Well, do you before you go completely, obviously down in that deep dark hole? Is there a remake that you've seen that you've maybe personally enjoyed? And I mean, it's putting you on the spot because I know you maybe thought of some bad ones, but I mean, did you enjoy it, for example? I mean, that technically is a remake, and it did some new stuff with it, but that was the most successful horror film like ever, and that's a remake.
I suppose. I guess it's not one that's come out yet, but I guess it is one of these ones where actually it seems to be very, very quick that they're rebooting this franchise. But I'm really looking forward to Spiral.
I thought you were going to say that, absolutely.
Which is obviously the next instalment in the Saw series. I, for one, really enjoyed the first couple of instalments of the Saw series. I went to see the rest of them, and then towards the end they got extremely silly.
We actually went to see Jigsaw, didn't we, in LA? I can remember. Yeah. It was we were like, right, okay, let's go to the TCL Chinese Theatre. So like an amazingly grand theatre that is world renowned, and we choose to go and see Jigsaw as our first film. I still get mad about that. The fact that we paid money and that was the film we went to go and see.
It was an option, wasn't it?
God damn.
It had to be a horror film. Though. But yeah, I'm excited by it because it looks like they're going to do something a bit different.
Yeah, I think it looks like they're going in a different direction, which maybe feels a little bit more kind of how the original maybe was, from like the investigation side of it, as opposed to I don't know, it just became about the traps, didn't it? And that was the problem.
Exactly. Talking about ones that I did quite like, though, controversial, I really did like the first series of the Scream TV series. I enjoyed it. I thought that was really good. I think it was nice to see it in a new medium. And
MTV as well.
Yeah,
like it was perfect. Yeah,
exactly. It didn't bring back any of like the original characters, which save that for the series, I guess. The film series, as it were.
I suppose that film series has been quite unique, though, hasn't it? Because it has retained its original cast. And I mean, even with this fifth instalment, we know Sidney Prescott's going to be a big deal in that, and Gail Weathers and Dewey and stuff. So, yeah, I agree. I think it might have gone downhill after that, but the first series was interesting enough.
Yeah. So I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. I'm going to do it. I'm slipping in. So there was definitely, and there still is, a kind of a glut of films, especially horror films, that are remakes of foreign language world cinema. So if a successful horror film came out in Spain, you could pretty much guarantee that a year or two down the line there would be an American remake. In the early 2000s, in the late 90s, it was Japanese horror, it was J-horror. You had the remakes of The Ring, The Grudge, all came out within a couple of years of the original, and by and large were pretty much carbon copies with American cast, American locations, and they were just not quite as good as the original. But I guess for the average cinema goer who didn't want to sit and watch a film with subtitles, and I guess also in the late 90s, the original versions would be harder to come by. You sort of forget that the original versions of these films would have been ones that you'd had to really seek out. You'd had to go to an art house cinema, or you'd have to get a VHS copy, delivered to your door from some sort of mail order catalogue. I
think we forget how much has changed, in the last decade alone. Like, we can literally go on a streaming service and find the original Ring and Grudge and stuff. And I think that kind of worked with the notoriety of the Ring, in the fact that, like you said, people were getting this on copied VHS tapes. So it's kind of ironic that that's how people were consuming it as well. It's definitely. But again, like what we said earlier, it's a barrier that maybe people don't want to cross.
Yeah.
So if a studio goes, do you know what, let's just do this in English, more people will see it.
So the one that I wanted to talk about was Quarantine, which is the remake of the Spanish found footage horror film Rec. So Rec came out in 2007.
Wow.
To rave reviews. It's got sequels of its own, which to varying degrees were decent / weird / odd / John Sponge. If you've seen the one with John Sponge in it, you're welcome. And Quarantine came out in 2008, so it's fair to say that Quarantine was probably being produced in the same year that Rec came out, within the same 12 months. They were ready to... They knew this was a success. They were like, right, let's get this out quick. And it is, for me, an example of a film that is just almost a shot-for-shot remake of the original. And it's sort of disappointing, because there's something about Rec. What made it scary for me was the fact that it was almost the fact that it was in another language. It was that otherworldly. It wasn't recognisably British. It wasn't recognisably American. It was very Spanish. Taking that away took away a lot of the kind of the scare factor for me. That and the fact that I had literally seen it done 10 times better the year before.
No, definitely. I don't know if it was, obviously, like you said, the language thing. I think that always works, especially with horror, because it makes it always seem a bit more frantic. Like you don't actually know what's going on or what's being said. But yeah, I think just because she was American, she just came off really obnoxious in Quarantine. Like really unlikable. Whereas Angela in the original, you're kind of like, I do not want anything to happen to this woman.
Oh, you're rooting for her 100%. And then in Quarantine, you're sort of like, even though it's the same film, you're like, meh.
Yeah.
Off you go. You know, can't wait for that bit at the end. So,
again, though, giving away the ending in the marketing, like, what is trailers these days are slightly off subject, but I think HBO Max are now streaming The Exorcist, so there's a trailer on YouTube which is called The Exorcist Modern Trailer, and I implore anyone to go and watch that and then watch the original trailer. But marketing these days is just insane. The amount of moments it gives away in that trailer,
I guess
it's just ridiculous.
I guess they're kind of being forced to show the money shots to get people interested, and unfortunately with a film like The Exorcist that relies on the money shots for its impact, giving them away is sort of the only way to attract an audience.
A lot of people will go and see The Exorcist anyway, because I think it is notorious in its own right, and that's funny that it hasn't really been rebooted. We've had a lot of exorcism films, we've had the Exorcist TV series, but from what I've watched of that so far, it seems like it's doing its own thing. I'm a bit kind of late to the party with that one, but I think that is something that might kind of not ever get a reboot, because I think people would go crazy.
This was a question that I wanted to ask you. Do you think there is a film out there that is sacred and therefore A, should not be remade, and B, will not be remade?
I think pretty much anything Spielberg related maybe has a bit of a sheen on it that can't be touched. I'm sure I've read somewhere that Back to the Future, like the studios, everyone has vowed never to reboot those films, which I think kind of makes sense. They're not personally my favourite films, but they're great to, like, you know, Sunday afternoon they're on TV. I'll probably always watch them, like Star Wars, for example. But I don't know. A film that I would absolutely lose my beep over, I'm doing the beeping for you there, Jonno, is if E.T. was remade.
Yeah. Like,
I know we've had various films that have had similar ideas. I'm sure there was something called, was it Earth to Echo or something, that kind of had like a little robot alien, and you had Mac and Me as well, which I personally love that. I think I saw it like when I was in primary school, they put it on, but I always love when Paul Rudd just shows that clip when he goes on that talk show in America as well, and it's just is it a kid in like just a wheelchair just flying off a cliff, which is just absolutely bizarre. But I don't know. I'd probably say anything Spielberg related maybe has a bit of protection. What about you?
I think that's it. I think seeing something like Jaws remade would be, in its own way, but a sacrilege, because it was perfect, and it also holds up so well today.
Yeah,
I think that's, and it was again, it was such a success. I think maybe that's a reason that, even though, I guess, in the horror community, in the horror circles, films are revered, in the wider kind of film community, in the general film going community, they're not as well revered. They're sort of seen as a horror film, therefore they're ripe for being remade. Something like Jaws, for example, kind of transcends that. It goes beyond it. It was a commercial success, it was a critical success, and therefore, and it's got that Spielberg aura about it now. Maybe it won't ever be touched. I
think what's funny though about that is that you had Suspiria is obviously an example of a remake quite recently that we've had, and that's a fairly obscure horror film in its own right. If I think people will go out and seek that film, or they'll be shown it if they're studying that sort of thing. I don't think it's a film you stumble upon like quite easily. So I think, it was ripe for being remade and completely went in a different direction, which I enjoyed. But it was also made by a gentleman who'd won the Oscar the previous year, I believe, with Call Me By Your Name. And he then decided to obviously go down this route, but then I don't think critically it was that successful. So even when you're then applying someone who's come from this field of acclaim to the genre, I don't think it's the easiest thing to break into and do successfully. So it's a bit of a weird one. Yeah, I think.
So you spoke a little bit actually about Star Wars a while ago. You mentioned Star Wars as a film that I don't think the originals will ever get remade. There'll be sequels. There'll be but what there has been, not a remake, but they have been given a layer of gloss.
Oh, 100%. I think Force Awakens is basically just bringing the audience up to date, isn't it?
No, I mean the actual originals have been re-released, haven't they? Been reissued.
Oh, you mean with like the digital, like? So you've got the purists out there who are like, no, and then you've got the people who just don't care. They just want to see droids and
that's
stuff.
it. So I was sort of thinking a film that I would quite like to see with a little bit of gloss applied in certain places would be the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, because looking back, that's nearly 20 years old now, and everything in that film that is practical stands up 100%.
Yes.
But there are moments in it, one that I can think of off the top of my head, Legolas with the mammoth elephant thing.
When he goes trunk surfing.
Yeah. you look back and you think, and
I don't know if even computers these days though would make that look realistic. I mean, physics were not a thing in that scene.
I just feel like something like that could be maybe.
It's funny though that you say that, because obviously you had the Hobbit trilogy come out like a decade later, really, didn't they, than the original kind of trilogy. And I can remember I went to go and see all three of those at the cinema, and I can remember just sitting there thinking, how is it that these films actually look worse than these other films made 10 years ago? And I think the problem was the CGI. So I think you're damn right, the practical stuff 100% stands up, because it's lit properly, it's there, it's physically a thing. and that will always be the case. And that's why I think a lot of the old horror movies still stand up, like The Thing and even Evil Dead. But it's when they start screwing around with stuff and they're like, oh, let's just do this with CGI. That's where it should be a marriage of the two. And I think when you go too far, you get the uncanny valley effect. You get all these things like physics not working, and it takes you out of it, and it dates it immediately.
That's it, isn't it? It's something like Jurassic Park, for example. I would argue that the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, the T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park looks spot on to this day, because the CG in that scene was used in such a way that hid it. Yeah. You know,
well, they had the rain, didn't they? They had very deliberate lighting. You didn't really see everything in like broad daylight. Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, because CG is so good, it gets overused, and you sort of get that. Oh, it's obviously CG. It's a dinosaur. It's got to be CG. Whereas back in 1993, that would have blown your socks off, and still.
I think in Jurassic World, I can remember seeing that and just seeing how like hyper realistic everything looked, and it just did look kind of shoddy to me. And I can remember they made a huge thing in the lead up to the film about how they were going to have this one scene that had like an animatronic head and all of this. And to me, it was actually funny that scene really stuck out to me as looking odd, because you could actually see it was real.
Yeah.
And then everything else looked kind of just a bit too weird.
A bit too glossy.
Yeah, so it was kind of insane that it was the other way around. You know, like whereas you'd expect to see like a digital shot and you'd be like, okay, great. It was weird that the practical stuff stood out, but maybe because everything else looked so crap.
So here's one. We talked a little bit about world cinema being remade in the English language. But it's interesting to think that there was a film that we saw at Mayhem last year at the Mayhem Film Festival, which, if people don't know, is a terrific film festival in Nottingham, hosted at the Broadway Cinema every year. It's fantastic. Horror, sci-fi, cult cinema. If you get a chance to go, 100% go for it.
It's a fantastic weekend.
They showed a film called Doorlock, which I assumed was horrendous now. I think it was Korean, and I thought, oh, fantastic! I love Korean horror. This is going to be one that's right up my street. Turns out it was a remake of a Spanish film. And that's something that you don't, as an audience, we don't think of.
Our stuff being remade elsewhere.
Yeah, we don't think of European cinema being remade, kind of in Asia, for example.
Yeah.
But
I suppose the original Paranormal Activity had that, though, didn't it? I'm sure there was Paranormal Activity, and then you had Paranormal Activity like Tokyo Night or something.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna, after this podcast, I think, have a bit of a look into some Asian remakes of British / European / American horror films, because it'd be interesting to see how, because the cultures are so different, how they're sort of twisted and turned and made accessible.
Well, I think you're seeing that more and more. Obviously, we mentioned about studios, and I think ultimately remakes are products of studios, but it's happening more and more in like articles. You're seeing that things are being altered for international audiences. Like, I know that there was a whole scene removed from the Beauty and the Beast live action film because it was like too gay for Russian audiences. And I know that the Pirates of the Caribbean films, there was like criticisms of Asian culture in there, and that the Oriental characters that were kind of put on screen were not, they were just stereotypical. And I do think that is something that everyone should be mindful of, because of course I don't think anyone goes out there unless they are absolute excuse my language, sorry, you're gonna have to beep that.
I'll keep that one in.
But do you know what I mean? I don't think anyone should go out there wanting to cause offence, but then it also leads you into a dangerous place where you might then start compromising elements of story and things to then just not offend anyone. And ultimately, you're telling a story, it's going to offend someone somewhere. I think it's a very difficult balancing act. I think this podcast episode has got way more political than I thought it was going to get. That's Trump's out, so now we're suddenly political beasts. But I don't know. I think it is a weird one. I will say that in our position, we're very fortunate that a lot of content is made in our language and for either in UK or American audiences. So there probably is a lot of remakes out there that for other audiences that we just don't hear about.
I've just done a quick Google, by the way, and apparently there's a Bollywood remake of Silence of the Lambs.
What? Oh.
Just so you're aware, and everyone else is aware.
That's crazy. I know that Bollywood is particularly notorious for just taking ideas
The Old
from
Boy
Western cinema.
remake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, this is true.
Which was remade over here to, well, I say over here in America to meh effect, and then also.
What did you think to that? Did you enjoy it, or I mean, you're a pretty big fan of the first. I say the first one. Sorry, the original.
Yeah, because I really love the original, and the original.
It's difficult, isn't it? Like
the original is so well done. It has that, and obviously when you first watch it, it has that absolute sucker punch of an ending. And then the remake was a terrific cast.
Yeah.
It had a fantastic director. It had everything in it to be fantastic, but it just wasn't the original.
Here's an interesting question. Have you seen any films where you've seen the remake first before you've then seen the original? So has a remake triggered you to go and seek out the original source material?
Oh my goodness, let me think. I don't know as I have.
I mean, I'd like to say that I've probably always seen the originals first, but I can guarantee there'll be one or two.
Here we go. Genuinely, Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw the remake before I saw the original.
That's kind of a travesty, but
that's awful, isn't it?
Oh, I've got one. Kind of a remake, but not. I saw Alien vs Predator before I saw Alien or Predator. I can remember.
Yes.
The reason why is I think I saw it on DVD, and then the Channel 4 did a thing where they then put Alien and Predator back to back as a thing because Alien vs Predator was out.
Yeah.
And I can remember I watched those after the fact to kind of find out, well, what were these things that I've just seen hitting each other?
Yeah. And then realised that the originals were much, much better.
Yeah. Just found out who Ripley was. She was the thing, so that's great. Arnie, just with massive guns and massive guns.
Oh, yeah.
Guns
you
upon guns.
Son of a bitch. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Honestly, I'm honoured he came onto the podcast for that brief moment with us.
Speaking of action stars, Liam, and stars of the highest order, deities, if you will. Gods, yes. I didn't want to say it. You've said it. It's out there. Nicolas Cage.
Is he still standing in that corner?
He's still in the corner. He is lurking, as usual. And it's happened. After the tease that we had last year for Willy's Wonderland, the full trailer has been released. And I, for one, colour me excited because I am cock-a-hoop.
Cock-a-hoop. Wow.
That's a phrase, isn't it?
It's one that I don't hear every day, I'll tell you that much.
But Nicolas Cage brings it out of me, and oh my goodness. That trailer has everything in it that I want in a film. Yeah.
I personally, it was everything that I expected from that and more. So I left very, very excited. I think my main takeaway was the fact that there was the line, "He's not locked in here with them, they're locked in here with him."
Which at no point did I think... I can't wait.
It was are they talking about the cast and crew, or are they talking about the animatronics that he has to fight? What's going on?
He appears to be some sort of mute hero as well, because in the trailer he doesn't say anything. He screams, but he doesn't say words. Which
do you think? Do you think they were okay? So Nick, if I can call you that, if it's okay, we want to get you in this film, and the deal is, right, we'll pay you all of this money. You don't have to say a word. You just have to just go full Nick Cage, at every animatronic we throw at you. And he just probably went, yeah.
So this is the thing. I think we've had this discussion before about good Cage, bad Cage, where Nick Cage seems to do one film for his bank balance and then one film for the love of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know when Jiu-Jitsu was made. I don't know if it was.
Have you seen it yet?
Not yet, but one of my friends has just watched it, and he tells me that Nick Cage does not make an appearance until minute 40, which sort of tells you everything you need to know about that film.
But he is front and centre on that poster, isn't he?
So I don't know if they were filmed, not back to back, but concurrently. So I get the impression that this is one of the films that he actually did believe in and will be front and centre, not just on the cover but in the film.
I don't think there's any way around it. Like, looking at the trailer, it seems like he is very much obviously a central character. I think they've kind of established that there's these people who are obviously trying to thwart whatever's going on inside this place and warn him. So I think there'll obviously be people to die, not things to die, people to die. But yeah, I think in the last few years, I've noticed him really leaning into that cult movie status. Yeah. Like, the choices he's made, I'm not going to criticize, because I think if you do something well, then go for it. I don't think he's wanting to go for Oscar-winning parts anymore. I think he just wants to have fun, and he is.
You look in recent years with Mandy and Colour Out of Space.
Yeah.
What choices? And who else could you see in that role?
Yeah, I think I kind of can't, see those films being as successful. And I think he is very much a Marmite actor. Like, I know for a fact that my mum, for example, no offence, Jonno, I know you're probably going to hate these words, but, if she sees a film that's got him in, she's immediately put off just because it's him. It's okay. You'll be okay, Jonno.
I understand.
But so I kind of get that is a thing for people. I personally don't mind him at all. I think he's brilliant. So he knows his audience, and I think he's pleasing said audience at the moment.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100% he's pleasing his audience.
I think what's good about Willy's Wonderland as well is that they've held out for the theatre release, haven't they? I know that was one of the reasons they delayed the marketing and the trailer and all of that jazz. So hopefully that means it's actually good and it isn't a thing that could just go straight to DVD.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we will be watching it on a streaming service. But as you say, the fact that it's actually they held out for a theatrical release shows them that they're looking at this film for the film to re-release all films. That's right. It's the one that's going to bring cinema back to the masses.
They'll throw those cinema doors open and everyone will fill the seats because they need some Nicolas Cage.
That's it. Just so you're aware, by the way, about 2 minutes ago I got a notification on my computer which made a noise, and I'm hoping I can cut around that. We'll see.
Well, it beats the phone call like on the first episode, right? It's just ringing in the background. We're like, okay, cool, let's just carry on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're planning on going into this, and like, please cut me out and we'll do it again if you do, but how have we not spoken about a certain film on this podcast episode involving a certain person, which is indeed a remake?
Oh my goodness me! I've written it down and I've not spoken about it. Are we talking about The Wicker Man?
Not the bees! Not the bees!
Which I think Nicolas Cage now claims was a comedy, doesn't he?
Do you think that, like, when they sat down and they were like, let's make this film, they thought that's what it would be?
I like to think genuinely that they had an eye on the tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, I mean, the scene where he punches someone in a bear suit is just kind of like... I mean, I don't know how that's not funny in any context, but okay.
But no, unfortunately, that is an example of one of the early 2000s kind of horror remakes that seemed to get churned out at the time.
That will also be an example of one where I saw it before the original.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've even watched the original all the way through.
The original is wonderfully weird.
So that's kind of bad.
Wonderfully weird.
I don't know, part of me just kind of wants to cling to it just being Nicolas Cage's version.
So would you say what you're telling me now is that the definitive version of The Wicker Man is Nicolas Cage's version?
Yeah, why not?
I'll take
and those CGI bees.
And the "How'd it get burned" moment, which is also one of my favourites.
I can't remember that, John. I think you're going to have to reenact it for me and the audience.
So I'm pretty sure it's the bit where he's on like a little jetty, and he picks up a doll, which I assume is his daughter's, and you just got to imagine Nicolas Cage's face as he lifts up the doll to show it to the lady, and he says the words, "How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?" Over and over again. Oh, Nick, this guy.
Oh, I just. Do you think that was the only take that they got, or do you reckon that he was just like? Do you reckon he did that, and then the director was like, "Okay, let's just do one more just for safety," and he was like, "No, that's the one, and that's the one that you're going to use."
I like to think that in the script it was written as calmly, "How'd it get burned?" So
he whispers.
Yeah, it should have been, "How'd it get burned?" And he went, "How'd it get burned?" And they went, "Cool, print it."
Okay.
What a
Lord.
guy. We talked then briefly about the possibility of cinemas reopening, and I wanted to use this episode because it's the start of the year as maybe a little bit of a look back on things that, because of the current situation, that we've missed. And for me, the cinema has been a kind of a big gap in my life, I guess, more than I thought it would be. I've not been to the cinema since, it must have been February, March last year. That's nearly 12 months of not being to the cinema.
Jeez.
I didn't go throughout any of the various lockdowns and unlockdowns that we had. And yeah, I cannot wait to get back to the cinema. Missing Mayhem last year, again, I spoke about this earlier on, it's a fantastic film festival in Nottingham. Missing that was another huge gap. Going to a film festival and watching films with an audience who loves that genre of cinema is a fantastic experience, and something you just can't replicate on a home streaming service. You can say as much as you like about, you can have a watch party, for example, or you can watch the films at home and then chat about it later, but actually being in that cinema with an audience that is 100% on board with what's on screen, there's nothing 100%. That beats it.
I think I was saying this to Rich the other day when we were talking. I watched One Cut of the Dead for the first time in a long time again, and was showing it to someone, and it was just so vastly different to the experience we had at that film festival. Yeah. And I can remember, I was still laughing because to me it was hilarious, but I think I was laughing from memory at the fact that we were all kind of united in this, like, what the hell is going on thing. And I think horror, even when it's serious horror, I love that communal experience that you have at a cinema where, I don't know, someone will scream on the back row, and that actually maybe shits you up a little bit more than like what's actually been on screen, because someone else has got scared, and then everyone laughs, and it's just something that, I think I'm the same. I've really missed it a lot more than I thought I would, because I'd probably go and see at least a film a week, like just to make sure I was keeping up to date with stuff, and I had a cinema card, and it was a thing to just do with people. And it's like, what do we do? It's insane.
That's it. Just to go full circle on that, by the way, One Cut of the Dead is apparently heading for an English language remake.
Wow. Okay. I can see it. See it. I don't think it'll have the charm that the original had, but I don't know. That's the future episode right there, isn't it?
That's it.
Let's talk about it.
Other things that we've missed, obviously going to the cinema, we've talked about that. We've not been able to make anything properly either, and being on set is something as well that I know a lot of filmmakers are going to be struggling with. Especially independent filmmakers who they haven't got the resources there available to quarantine before a shoot or to create a bubble. I
know, it's insane.
It's been difficult, hasn't it?
I think the thing is there's all these obviously courses that you can take about being COVID safe, and some of those alone come at quite a big cost, just to say that you've got this qualification and being COVID secure on set. insurance, there's all of these sorts of things come into play. And I mean, these are all obstacles that, I mean, getting a film made even prior to quarantine, lockdown, COVID was difficult for a lot of people. And you were constantly having to rally the people around you, resources that you had to just even do that. And now it's just this other huge barrier is in place that's preventing you from doing these things. Because I don't think at any point any kind of creative project outweighs people's health, and I think that's what's been quite admirable about everyone that I've seen, and obviously even us as a team. We've all kind of known how important this situation has been that we've been going through, and that's never been something that we've kind of taken lightly. It doesn't mean it isn't bloody frustrating, and it doesn't mean that we don't want to be just getting back together and doing this stuff. But I guess we've just had to keep busy in the ways that we can. We've started up the podcast again. We've got loads of like stuff being made behind the scenes that we can kind of try and still release. And you've just got to keep the momentum up. And I think for creative people, that's often something that you can struggle with, you know, in terms of motivation. Because more often than not, these things that we do can come with very little reward. Sometimes you get lucky, and then you get loads of recognition and things that you'd want out of the project. But yeah, it's a tough time, but I don't think that any of us are going to come out of the other side of this like worse off than we went in. I think we're just going to have even like a renewed passion and fire for it. I know I'm certainly going to be so grateful when we next get back on set and you've got your dimmer switch plugged in, we've got the light temperature just right, and then I can call action after counting down 3, 2, 1 action like I do. So yeah, we've just got to be patient, I think, but it's definitely something I've missed, that's for sure. I just miss seeing you guys. Like, this is lovely. I love that I can see you now and when we have other people on, but it's just not the same, is it?
No, I think that's it, isn't it? I think this is what's been difficult, not just in the kind of the work that we do, but just in life in general. It's you can see people, but you can see them through a screen. And you can go and chat on a doorstep, but it's just not the same. And I think certain people play a little bit fast and loose with the rules, both in kind of the filmmaking community. Maybe people have gone out and made things when maybe they shouldn't have done, and I think I'm really pleased that as a group we've sort of made that conscious decision to think, you know what, there are things that are more important. And you know what, everyone's health and well-being is right at the top of that. But
I'd rather still have a healthy team when we can get back to it, that's for sure.
And as you say, that first time we get back on set, that first time we get back in a cinema, the first time we do all the things that we couldn't do, you know, last year, and hopefully not too much longer this year, it's going to be that much better.
Cut to episode 21 and we're still like, okay, so COVID-53 is still a thing.
We have a new variant.
We've not made films for 3 years now. It's we laugh, but we're dying inside.
Yes, horribly dying inside. So what are you looking forward to most this year then? What, if you could pick one thing, what would it be?
I think, oh God, that is a tough question.
Oh, yes.
I think in all honesty, I'm just looking forward to probably returning to some kind of normality with kind of what you said with the film stuff. Like, I personally would love for kind of when Mayhem's a thing, or even Halloween is a thing, like, I'm trying to be realistic. I think I'd love for around that sort of time it be okay enough for us just to have a get together and sit down together, watch an absolutely horrendously bad movie, and just laugh and have a joke, and it'd be okay to do that. And I don't know, as not be thinking that that's the last time that we might see each other again for like 2.5 years or whatever. I think what's also has been great about, I mean, seeing positives about the time that we've had, it's given me so much time to sit down and write stuff. So it doesn't mean that we're short of ideas when we are good to go again. And I think it's been valuable as well to maybe take a little bit of time back and just reflect on stuff, see what everyone else has been up to. And I think as a team, we've really unified, and we've all kind of taken on things that we can be doing individually to still keep things going. And that's been a really great change. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think we know what the future holds for us all at the moment. And we've just got to ride the wave a bit now and see what happens.
Yeah, very, very well said.
What about you? What are you looking forward to? Or is it just the cinemas? Is that all you care about, Jonno?
It's seeing Nicolas Cage's face on that big 30-foot screen. No, it's what you say. It's outside of the filmmaking stuff. It's just getting back to that sense of normality where, you know what, as you say, this might not be the last time. This could be the last time that we'll do this in X amount of months. I'd just quite like things to be normal enough that you can go around someone's house and not think, oh, I've been in here for too long, I've got to open a window. I'd quite like just to be able to go around someone's house for a cup of tea and not feel
like you've got to go through the decontamination chamber on the way out. No,
I think that's
I know what you mean. It's a weird time. What I'm not looking forward to is the onslaught of COVID-themed horror films that we're no doubt going to get. I mean, I've seen quite a few that have already kind of sprung up. And whilst we enjoyed Host, that was kind of COVID-themed, but in a different way.
Yeah.
I had the displeasure of watching Songbird this week. I don't know if you've seen this.
That's the it went obviously it went straight to streaming services because it can't really go anywhere else. But no, I saw a trailer for it, and I then immediately went on Rotten Tomatoes just to see how it had been received, and not well.
It's a shame as well because there's some decent people involved, and I mean, again, I believe it's Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes production company, so maybe they should just stop. I don't know. But yeah, it was kind of like the concept and kind of idea just wasn't there enough. It kind of just reminded me of like The Purge, but I don't know, like what you'd expect Purge 7 to be, just with coronavirus thrown in as a reason why kind of things are a bit crap for people. That's not to say don't check it out, and it's also not to be confused with Triskel Pictures' Songbird, which I'm sure there's been some confusion on Amazon with that, people streaming either or are not expecting Janet Devlin singing and doing stuff. But it's not the greatest, and I think the fact that we've not had much in the way of new content is getting to a lot of people. But I think that's hopefully going to change because there's only so long that they can postpone releases of films that have been made. So as a final point then, film that you're looking forward to most in 2021? It's got to be Halloween Kills. It's a toss-up between that and Ghostbusters Afterlife. Godzilla vs. Kong's also coming out like very soon on streaming platforms, so could be good. But if Godzilla doesn't win, then it's not going to be good. It's going to be bad.
Godzilla
very
fan.
Bad. Okay. Team Godzilla all the way.
All the way.
What about you, Jonno?
For me, obviously, it's the massively delayed No Time to Die. The latest in the James Bond franchise, which I've been looking forward to, obviously, since it was first announced, and it's just been put back and put back. I really hope it gets a cinema release, but if it doesn't, I hope it does well. I'm also looking forward to the new Top Gun, which again has been massively delayed, and I guess you would call that one would you call it a soft reboot, Liam? Or a sequel? A soft
possibly.
Sequel? A hard sequel?
I'm sure. I don't know. Tom Cruise is involved, so it could be soft or hard. We don't know.
I know what I am.
I don't know. I'm quietly curious about it. I'm not too sure that it is going to be the best.
All
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
about with it is that the actual flying sequences are going to be tip top because they
Yeah.
actually did them, which is
I was
incredible.
going to say, and I can imagine that there's also been a lot of kind of practical stuff. Like he will have done a lot of crap himself, won't he, on that film? Absolutely.
90% sure he flies the jets.
That's insane. Are you being serious?
Yeah. 100%.
That is crazy.
There'll be somebody in there with him, obviously, to take control, but I'm pretty sure he flies those. He flies it off the aircraft carrier, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, because I mean, how much must their insurance policy be for that? Because I mean, he could literally just fly off and then in the sea.
And I was in the sea. Tom. Yeah, I guess that's the. I think I read somewhere one time that I think Jackie Chan and Tom Cruise, they just could not get insurance, which is why they have their own production companies, because if it all goes wrong,
is that why he produces, so he can be like, well, it's my
stops with
decision.
him, so
that's fair. Two honourable mentions as well of films hopefully coming out this year is Edgar Wright's latest Last Night in Soho, which I believe is supposed to be like a psychedelic 60s thriller trip, psychological thing. I don't really know too much about it, but great people involved, and also I don't think we've seen a lot from Edgar Wright in a few years. Obviously, Baby Driver. So excited for that. And James Wan has Malignant coming out, which is being kind of touted as a giallo piece.
Hello,
so
giallo.
You know my feelings on giallo. Giallo, hello.
Ooh,
just kill me now.
That's a TV series we could make, isn't it?
Can you imagine giallo, hello? It's just people just getting stabbed with brightly coloured lights.
Yeah, with
in France.
really bad French accents.
It's almost like we've reviewed a film that was an anthology that had really bad French accents. I can't remember what it was called.
We never speak of it again.
I think I said, didn't I, that the producer started following us on Instagram.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I don't think he's listened to the episode.
No,
but,
he also follows me on Twitter. Which is
I'm sure Glenn Danzig is actually he's made another film, hasn't he? And it's got the guy from Final Destination in. So he's actually got like some actors in this one, I think, which is good.
Fair play.
I think it's a western, but it's got weird elements to it. Yeah, like a western. Yeah, it's got some weird elements going on. So that should be a feast for the eyes, even if the eyes are on the nipples.
So that is it for this episode of the No Ghouls Allowed podcast. Thanks to Liam for joining me on this episode.
You are most welcome.
Any time. Well, actually, I say any time. Next
it's
month.
once a month. Yeah, once a month.
Once a
yeah.
month.
No more contact than that. No. I'm not going to lie. At the start of the episode, you did say on this week's. Yeah, again, you did it. I didn't want to be that guy, but I'll be that guy at the end. That's fine.
Sick. We'll keep it in. One thing to update people on, the Super Freak Media blog is definitely alive and well. Charlie has been putting some content on there. The latest post is a Meet the Team post, so you can get to know a little bit more about us if you would like to. We've all got a little paragraph on there about what we do behind the scenes. And for this month's little competition, all you need to do is like the Instagram post, which we'll place a link to in the description, and it's also going to be on Instagram, which is where Instagram posts usually reside. So if you like the post, you'll be entered into the prize draw to win some Super Freak Media goodies, if that is what you would like. Liam is laughing at me because I've rabbled my way through this, but you know what? I quite like it as an ending to the podcast.
I do. I think it's fitting. I think it was the perfect explanation. People have no idea what to do, and they'll probably get something out of it at the end. So
that's it. Like the post on Instagram that advertises this podcast. You're entered into a prize draw. Boom.
Done. Never hear from us again.
That's it.
Yeah. Cool.
See you next time. And Liam, keep it creepy.
Oh,
See
God.
You on the other side. Hello and welcome to the Super Freak Media podcast, No Ghouls Allowed, with me, your host, Jonno Butler, and joining me today. I'm fine with today. Today's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to go today.
Makes sense. At least it's not this week's podcast.